The past holds many secrets, and we're here to uncover them. Stay with us for some amazing discoveries. Imagine digging into the ground and suddenly finding something that could change everything we know about history. Believe it or not, this happens more often than you'd think. In this video, you'll see discoveries so unbelievable that even archaeologists had a hard time accepting them. Get ready to travel through time and be amazed by the buried secrets of the past. Digging up old roads is often a good way to find ancient treasures, but it's not every day that the treasure turns out to be another old road. That's exactly what happened in June 2021 in the Polish city of Jarosław. Workers laying a new road accidentally uncovered an 18th century wooden road buried beneath it. Wooden roads were rare even back in the 1700s, and they typically led to city gates. That might have been the case here too, but this particular road doesn't show much evidence of use. These types of roads were usually built for horse-drawn carts, which left hoofprints and ruts in the wood. But this one has neither. So maybe the road was barely used, or perhaps its surface was replaced just before it was buried. The first option seems more likely. The road is only 100 feet long, and while archaeologists have found other wooden sections nearby, they don't believe the pieces were ever connected. It's possible the road was abandoned before it was even finished. In a recent expedition to Egypt, archaeologists made a discovery that could reshape our understanding of history. At Karnak Temple, one of the oldest religious complexes in the world, a mysterious carving was found on a stone wall. It shows a noble woman holding something that looks shockingly like a modern camera. This artwork, which dates back about 3,000 years, shows a woman holding the object in a pose very similar to how we hold digital cameras today. The round lens, the buttons, even what appears to be a viewfinder, the details left experts speechless. How could an ancient civilization depict something that looks so much like modern technology? Early research suggests the carving might have been made during the reign of Ramses II, one of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs. But what the object really is remains a mystery. Some historians believe it's just a fancy mirror. Others have proposed bolder theories, suggesting the ancient Egyptians might have had access to technologies far beyond anything we've imagined. The Karnak discovery is now considered one of the greatest archaeological puzzles of all time. If this carving truly shows something that shouldn't exist in that era, then what other secrets are still buried beneath the sands of Egypt? Share your thoughts in the comments. It took years to unlock the secrets of the Vasca Votiva di Noceto. But in June 2021, archaeologists finally cracked the case. This strange underground monument was first discovered in Italy's Po Valley back in 2005. At the time, experts thought it might be a wooden water tank or maybe a public bath. That was all they could figure out back then, but a recent breakthrough in radiocarbon dating revealed much more, including the fact that the structure is over 3,400 years old. More scanning using non-invasive ground survey techniques uncovered an almost identical structure buried directly beneath the original Vasca Votiva. And that's not all. Later digs uncovered a huge number of ceramic items and small figurines, all of which had clearly been deliberately buried. With all this evidence, archaeologists now believe the site was used for a water-based cult or ritual, and that the tank or bathhouse was central to their ceremonies. Since a new structure was built right on top of the old one, it's likely that the site had been in use for more than 3,400 years. Continuing with Roman discoveries, in January 2020, archaeologists uncovered what's now called the secret Sphinx room beneath Emperor Nero's palace. This room had been hidden for 2,000 years. Nero was known for his extravagant taste, and apparently that included building lavish tunnels beneath his palace. The walls of these tunnels are covered in bright murals featuring both real and mythical animals. Some of the artwork was even painted with gold, adding weight to the idea that this was part of Nero's legendary Golden Palace. Historians are fairly certain the palace and tunnels were built after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, but after Nero's death, his successors were so disgusted by him that they destroyed parts of the palace and filled other parts with earth to erase his memory. It looks like the demolition crew either missed the Sphinx room entirely or never even knew it existed. Excavating the entire space is likely to be a slow and delicate process, but archaeologists are determined to get it done. While it's long been speculated that the ancient Romans kept slaves in Britain, there's always been little solid evidence, until recently. In April 2021, construction workers extending a house in Rutland, England, stumbled upon the remains of a man who had been bound. For a moment, the poor builders must have thought their client was hiding a murder. But it wasn't a recent burial. Archaeologists later confirmed that the remains belonged to a man who likely died in the 3rd or 4th century AD. He had been left in a deep pit with iron shackles still around his ankles. Historians believe that shackles were usually removed from deceased slaves to reuse them. So either this man committed some terrible crime and was punished even in death, or there's another explanation for his fate. One theory suggests a superstitious belief that the dead could rise again unless physically restrained, a notion mentioned in a few ancient Roman texts. If that's what happened here, this could be the first solid physical evidence of the practice in Britain. Finding a single rock-cut tomb in Egypt isn't especially rare, but finding 250 of them, that's a record-breaking discovery. These tombs were all carved into the hillsides of El Hamidiyah in Sohag, Egypt. Evidence shows that the oldest tombs were carved about 4,200 years ago, and the tradition of burying people here went on for a long time. The last tomb was built nearly 900 years after the first one. There's a big difference in style between the older and newer tombs. The oldest ones are grand and elaborate, with spacious rooms and intersecting halls. The more recent ones are smaller, simpler, and mostly undecorated. This could mean the stone carving skills declined over time, or the way the site was used changed. The most common theory is that the tombs were originally reserved for high-status nobles, but by the end, they were open to everyone. If the ancient Egyptians had kept carving, there might have been room for even more tombs. It would be fascinating to know why they suddenly stopped. The glaciers in Norway are melting. Whether or not humans are to blame, it's definitely not great news for the environment. But it's turning out to be a goldmine for archaeologists. As the ice retreats in Norway's Breheimen National Park, it's revealing frozen secrets one by one. In May 2021, a wooden box full of ancient candles was found in Lenbreen Pass. The ice preserved the box so well that the lid was still sealed, and the candles inside were perfectly intact. The box even had its original leather handles. Scientists carbon dated the pine wood and found that the box was likely made around the year 1475. The candles, made from beeswax, would have been expensive. They were probably used in seasonal mountain farms, where livestock were taken to graze during the summer. These farms often lacked basic amenities, so candles were the only source of light. The box might have simply fallen off a horse during a journey through the pass, which must have been incredibly frustrating for its owner when they realized it was missing. These days, people love to mock anyone with a cheesy quote like live, laugh, love, written on their social media bio or home wall, but they probably shouldn't. Humans have been writing equally sentimental stuff since the very beginning of writing. Take, for example, a set of 80 bronze mirrors recovered from a tomb in Shanxi Province, China, in April 2021. Archaeologists believe the tombs date back to the Warring States period, which makes the mirrors about 2,200 years old. Many tombs from that time were looted, but the mirrors were often left untouched, possibly as a sign of respect. Modern archaeologists had no such hesitation and recovered the mirrors from beside the heads of the deceased. In some cases, traces of silk were still stuck to the mirrors, suggesting they may have been stored in silk bags before the burials. They were found alongside both men and women, so whatever symbolic meaning they had, it clearly applied to everyone. The messages engraved on them included phrases like eternal joy, long life in memory, and wealth to my family. And now back to Roman discoveries. Here's a 4th century Roman bath that recently emerged from beneath the sand dunes. The ancient Roman baths in Cadiz, Spain are only partially preserved, but the fact that anything remains is almost a miracle. Cadiz was founded by the Phoenicians over 3,000 years ago. so the city was already ancient by the time the Romans arrived. Then, in 410 AD, the Visigoths invaded southern Spain and leveled much of what the Romans had built. A lot of Roman structures were deliberately destroyed, but somehow the baths survived. They probably weren't in use for long before the Visigoths arrived. It's likely they remained intact because they were buried under wind-blown sand shortly after being abandoned. Although the structure is heavily damaged, there are still traces of black, red, and white plaster that once decorated the walls. In some places, even the marble paneling is still visible. Rather than being built for royalty or the wealthy, the baths were likely a shared space used by laborers from nearby fish farms and salting factories. Hyde might seem like an unlikely place to find the only surviving piece of a 19th century shipwreck, but you just never know what you'll come across in Old Hyde. So, here's the story. Back in 1891, a ship called Maid of Lincoln left the Abrolhos Islands off the west coast of Australia, overloaded with guano. The combination of too much cargo and, well, some pretty bad weather caused the ship to crash into the rocks of Dore Island Bay shortly after setting sail. The crew managed to escape in a lifeboat and made it to shore, where they were lucky enough to run into the Grigson family, who just happened to have a horse and cart. The Grigsons kindly gave the grateful crew a ride to the nearest town. In return, the ship's captain gave the family the lifeboat as a thank you gift. The Grigsons actually used it as a fishing boat for years, but after it got damaged, they tucked it away in their straw shed. It stayed there until John Grigson, a descendant, inherited the property and rediscovered the boat in March 2021. And today, it's on display in a local museum. Back to the ancient Romans, this time we're talking about Roman security systems. What you're looking at is a rare archebulos, one of only 4 known examples in the world. You can think of it like an ancient lockbox or safe. The ornate box was in such fragile condition when it was discovered in the mid-1990s that archaeologists couldn't safely excavate and remove it until 2019. It was found in the ruins of Casa del Mitrio, likely a luxurious Roman villa that burned down roughly 1,600 years ago. Almost nothing survived the fire, except this box. The thick layers of ash, soot, and debris created the perfect conditions to preserve it. Now you might wonder, how could a wooden box protect anything valuable? Here's the twist. It was booby-trapped, and those traps are still functional. Open it the wrong way, and sharp steel spikes will spring out with potentially deadly results. Even the archaeologists who found it weren't brave enough to try opening it. We're all familiar with internet memes and like to think of them as a modern invention, but they're not. In fact, this medieval silver badge could easily be called a meme. It was found in Pontefract, Yorkshire, England in 2020. Archaeologists believe it was made in the 13th century. The badge shows a knight climbing out of a snail shell, which is already silly, but the snail shell is floating on top of a goat. At the time, snails were associated with cowardice, so the badge may have been a satirical jab at someone, possibly mocking the elite or calling an enemy cowardly. Historians think it was probably mass-produced and passed around for fun, just like memes today. Someone in medieval England clearly thought a certain knight was acting foolishly, and people found it funny. It's one of those inside jokes where you really had to be there. Now let's talk about the spider mural discovered in northern Peru. It's about 3,200 years old, but archaeologists didn't even know it existed until January 2021. The artistic style and the reverence shown to the spider suggest it might have been worshipped as a god. Still, it's hard to imagine why a spider god would need a knife, but there's definitely one depicted in the mural. The most likely creators were the Kupasnik people, known to have lived in that region at the time. It's believed they associated spiders with rainfall and possibly even fertility. The mural isn't far from a river, which probably served as a vital water source, so it makes sense to worship a rain or water deity nearby in hopes that the river would never dry up. There's some archaeological evidence that an ancient temple once stood nearby, but farmers probably destroyed it centuries ago. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and enjoy more amazing videos on my channel.